diagnosed by a psychology expert through his movies. That is a very, very clear setting where you are. It's just a very clear setting where you're supposed to be acting.
Where?
Streaming, you know, for Dr. Disrespect, you know he's a persona. For us, it's less so like that. But haven't you seen an equal amount of people deducing similar things from Amber Heard's interviews, from the way she speaks on the stand, from XYZ?
I think a random Twitter's opinion about her behavior isn't comparable to a qualified medical or psychiatric expert going on stand and under oath about I don't think that these are even comparable. They're not even close.
Well, I mean, that's fair, but isn't that what a court of law allows?
What do you mean?
I don't know what is common or not.
Wait, in what sense?
Well, do they not have experts come on and I guess give their opinion from what they've seen of the evidence and maybe the trial?
Well, I think that's what it's all about, right? I think that's what they're trying to prove is that if you bring your witness that has studied and been one-on-one with your subject, right? And ask questions about those findings and their medical, analytical opinion of the field that they're experts in, right? Not their long-range analysis of 4 or 5 pieces of media given by one side of the fucking.
But you do recognize that he was also speaking about like some sort of memory test that Johnny Depp did take.
Three out of 30, which he could not deem as conclusive because the subject wasn't controlled. It could have been drunk or high, or it could have been a jet lag. Could have been.
Well, yes, but isn't that still? I feel like that's such a biased response. Like, hey, here is a test that someone takes to judge their cognitive ability or their memory. Yeah, but what if they were high when they took it?
Okay, that's 3 out of 30.
Okay, what if?
That's 3 out of 30. You know that, right? No, I'm not kidding. So he did not see the result of the tests, right? All the 27s, right? All the whatever the fuck the rest is, right?
If an expert witness isn't able to have a one-on-one session with someone, this is all the information that they have. My point is,
then don't talk about it.
You should just. Well, then we shouldn't talk about anything.
Well, that's why they brought doctors of her doctor. She spoke about her. Doctors spoke about her experience. Doctors came on and psychologists came out to speak about her experience and her thoughts and her, because she analyzed her. This guy is as good as some random YouTuber who analyzed Johnny's clips on the internet. He's just as qualified.
To be honest, I'm a little annoyed because I feel like I'm being put in a position to defend this guy whose testimony I only watched half of.
Okay.
So I can't really do that. But I'm curious, do you know whether he asked for a one-on-one? Was he not able to get one?
He asked. So we don't know entirely, but they did ask, but it wasn't court ordered, so they just declined on the advice of counsel.
Well, then if you're Amber's legal team, would you rather have nothing or have this guy come in and give his expert opinion off of what he can, which granted isn't much and isn't really credible, but
well, I think you.
It's like you're arguing with me.
You just don't bring him at all. I think you just don't. I mean, you bring him in to talk about what he found about Amber, right? Because that's their side, and kind of move on from that, right? But I think it comes across as incredibly risky and disingenuous to bring a guy who's seen clips and who was literally being disproven on the stand that he's wrong. They literally said that his earpiece could have been music. I mean, who are you or who am I to say that it wasn't music?
Yeah, but who are we to say that it was?
Well, it's a court of law. Yeah, you would have to prove that claim. You can't just make a claim and say, well, it could have not been, lol, or it could have been. It could have, lol. It's a probability. This is what the guy's doing. That's why he's getting rolled for.
Well, the onus can be kind of on either.
What's good of law? They have to prove it. They would have to prove that they would have to prove that it wasn't music, right? Yeah, it's guilty, innocent until proven guilty, right? Right? Innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof falls on them.
I'm tired of speaking.
That's all right.
With this chat reading, and again, like, when I say unbiased, like, I am just watching the trial from the moments that I can watch, which is not all of it, and I just judge individual pieces of evidence. That's it.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, I think the guy did an extremely garbage job, and I think he's actually molding on stand, and I kind of feel bad that they had to go to lunch.
I do think he got kind of defensive, but I feel like Johnny's lawyer wasn't doing a great job either.
Well,
he was arguing nuances, which like I kind of understood, because the guy was being defensive and kind of standing his ground. At least I, as a viewer, and I'd assume the jury too, just gets kind of frustrated watching that back and forth.
In my opinion, in a battle of Pepega against Pepega, right?
Yeah.
Right? The guy asking questions wins by default. Because the jury is idiots. It's your average Joe dumb fuck like me. Right? So then, if they're both going full Pepega, the question is so stupid, right? And he doesn't know what the fuck is going on, and answers some dog shit. How do you think that makes him look to the jury? He's getting agitated, he's getting mauled, he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He's answering weird shit to the point where the judge has to step in and say, yo, answer the question, even if it's stupid. It literally makes him look bad in front of the jury.
I think there were moments like that where he looked bad, but there was a lot of moments where the lawyer was like stuttering but also speaking really slowly, and he sounded confused and wasn't delivering his questions properly. So I think they both looked really bad.
That's why I said Pepega against Pepega.
Yeah, I just don't feel like the witness looked that much worse.
I mean, I think he's kind of self-destructing in terms. My problem with him is that there are some points that are very easy to concede that don't make him look bad or weaken his defense, right? Mm-hmm. But he just won't give them up. He just won't just say, yeah, you're right.
I think he did. I mean, with the music earpiece, he said, okay, well, I was told this, and if that's the case, then I retract that or something like that.
Which would alter his conclusion, but then he said it didn't affect it didn't do anything to his conclusion, so it doesn't make sense.
From what I was listening to this morning of his testimony, my main takeaways were him just going over how Johnny Depp's drug addiction could impact his memory and his likelihood to be involved in like domestic abuse or like Wait,
say that one more time.
So my main takeaway from his testimony that I listened to this morning, what I heard was just him talking about Johnny Depp's drug addiction and how that could impact his memory issues, memory loss during those moments, and his likelihood of doing IPV, I think is what it's called, which is just like, yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, when I hear an expert talk about that, I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense to me.
No, it does make sense. But like I said, again, they're all talking about like probabilities.
It's not for sure this occurred, but it's more so.
Well, I don't think it helps
the likelihood
at
is
all.
higher. I think it helps Amber's side.
You think?
Yeah. For someone to say that he was likely to do it due to his addiction and issues, yeah.
Well,
that's the whole point of him being their witness.
Well, in that case, I mean, her doing drugs doesn't help her either at all. If
True, but drug use is very different from drug addiction and abuse. And I am also like very, very against stigmatizing those with drug addiction or even drug addiction in general. But really going into the nitty gritty of how that can impact someone's behavior, their memory loss, mental disorders, all of those things, I think is helpful information.
Yeah, I mean, I give you an example, but I don't think there's any conclusion to be drawn from that. 'Cause it's like, I mean, people that are addicted to drugs, I mean, do a lot of other things. I mean, they have financial problems, right? They go in debt. They go homeless. There's suicide.
Yeah,
there's
but
problem
for
with family, right? But I mean, does that mean that?
For example, I never knew how much both the drugs that he was taking or the things that he was prescribed or the things he was addicted to could impact his memory loss. And to me, I feel like, you know, it becomes more of a possibility that he perhaps did abuse her but didn't remember those moments or blacked out during those moments. And I think creating like that doubt in a jury's mind is obviously helpful to Amber's side.
Okay, I mean, she was recording a lot, and she said in her testimony, under oath, that she was recording to help him remember. Right? And I remember that. Right? So
maybe.
So,
yes.
So, so I'm sure she has
like
evidence.
The snoring and stuff.
Anything. So I'm sure she has evidence of him. I mean, abusing her, black and white, right? That he doesn't remember. Surely there's some of that, right? That's what I think. That's what I'm waiting for.
I think it would be obviously all of this would be easier if she had very direct evidence of him abusing her.
The problem is that she's filming like 20 things.
And yeah, the photo evidence she has is really not strong in comparison of the claims that she's making. I agree. But like, that's all I have to say.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's
I'm not on Amber's side, but I do think people are trying really hard to justify every single thing Johnny has done, and there still is a decent amount of
justifying. Like what has he done that you think needs to be justified, or people are justifying?
Even the texts he sent.
Which one?
Like saying that he wants to like burn her to death and then F her corpse and then, you know, those things. But people are like, it's a movie reference. And it's like, even if it is a movie reference, I think that's a bit of a crazy thing to
I'm gonna be honest, I've been trying to like kind of like dismiss some of his text messages because I think he speaks in poems, like kind of like boomers, right? And it's just kind of like really dumb.
I think in some instances, yeah, he does. And again, it's crazy to me because like, I feel like I sound like I'm on Amber's side, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to be like, well, this looks bad for her and this looks bad for him. And that's really it. And even that I feel is because in comparison to how biased the media has gotten around this case, it feels like I'm biased towards her. But I don't really care how this trial ends.
Why not?
Just enjoying kind of watching. I guess it's more so like I'm not emotionally invested in either her winning or her losing, is my point. And why not? Just because I have no
feel like we
personal biases towards either people. Or
I
either person.
feel like we should, because it's like a win for everybody.
Why would this be a win for everybody? Either which way?
Because I think if she ended up being wrong and whatever happens, I mean I think this will prevent people from doing dog shit for any reason, attention or whatever, or anything public that is crazy, right? Because now there's a precedent that doing dog shits while you're high-roading legitimate movement that help and empower victims, right? You can't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
I get what you're saying.
It's a win for.
That would be true if it was the case where like I really felt like there was absolutely 0% chance that he abused her. If this was like super clearly a fake thing, it would be easier to say that. But at this point, it's gotten so like gray and murky, it's a little bit hard to tell.
I know what you mean by that. What's murky? The waters? What's murky?
Yeah, the waters. Like,
well, I mean,
if it was very clear that she was lying about this and doing this for money or just doing it for attention and whatever, I would understand that her losing would be a win for everyone, because it's setting the precedent that like you can't just go after people for no reason and profit from it, even if what you're saying is a lie. Do I feel like she exaggerates and she does lie sometimes? Likely. But can I say without a benefit of the doubt, can I say without a doubt that he didn't abuse her at all? No, there were just way too many things he said and did, and a couple instances that like witnesses that she's brought on have attested to. In
my opinion, then I'm gonna just fire back with that. Then I'm not gonna fire back because I'm not that invested. Like I said last time, I think relationship dynamics are really complicated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of a bad precedent, because if you, let's say, violence is never the option. It shouldn't be any violence ever, right? But if,
I agree.
Let's say in a scenario where both parties are equally abusive and crazy and toxic and dog shit, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a bad precedent to possibly run to the press like it's like a race.
Yeah, and
first
act
one,
like you were the only victim when you
first
were.
to go to the press, first to get there,
you.
And I think that's just fucking lame as shit.
No, I actually agree with you. I very much do. Like, if both people were mutually abusive and toxic, I do think it is lame for one person to go to the press and say, I was the victim and that was it. But the thing is, defamation is like a very, very, like, it just can't be the law to set that precedence, because defamation just says, did this person lie? And if two people are abusive towards each other or violent towards each other, and one person says, you know, I was abused, technically they were, even if they also did abusing. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, but at that point, then the public opinion matters.
Yeah, but it's not for the courts to decide whether that's like defamation is just not gonna make a difference in that regard. Johnny should have just also publicly done some kind of op-ed and said we were both abusive, blah, blah, blah. Like, that would have been as equal as they really could have gone.
Oh, I mean, okay. I don't know if you've been living under a rock or something like that. Okay, that is not how things go. With all due respect, there's absolutely no. I mean, there's like I genuinely think there's a little bit of an imbalance, especially with stigmas around interpersonal and violence, especially in relationships.
I agree, but I don't think
that
a court of law can do much about that because of a defamation case. My point is not disagreeing with you, and I do understand, like, abuse and SA allegations will typically favor, in a court of public opinion, the woman going through it. My point is just regarding the legalities of defamation. And you know what those are, right?
What do you mean?
Defamation is just, did this person lie knowingly when they said this thing?
Yeah, for sure, I know that.
So when Amber said, let's say in this hypothetical, Amber and Johnny were both physically and emotionally abusive towards each other. So when she wrote in an article, I was abused, is she technically lying?
As far as I'm concerned, that's not what happened. What was written is survivor of sexual violence, blah blah, type thing, which is much bigger and a much harsher and like impossible position to defend yourself from. Like, once I don't think you understand. Once you end this territory, you already lost.
I think her. Hello.
Even if he
think
wins, he
her-
already lost. Wait, hold up. I hope you understand this.
Yeah.
Johnny already lost a long time ago. The second this op-ed was posted live, he already lost. Even let's say that he was right, he already lost. The damage is irreparable. You don't get that time. You don't get that prime. Let's say you when you were prime and your viewers were popping off, right? And you were growing. I told you can't go live for a whole year. Doesn't matter. You already lost. You'll never recover that. You'll never be in your prime again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then you just have to decide a point at which legally you deserve some kind of payback for that. And what the courts have decided, defamation is when the person is lying and they know that they're lying.
And then, in addition to that,
again,
Ms.
my
Heard,
point
It started.
was... Oh, okay.
I'll do it in a minute. Sorry, it's not getting off. Sorry, it's because it's live
Oh,
again.
that's okay.
You sure? Oh god, I feel bad now. Oh god, Jesus Christ.
you to provide an opinion in this case because you didn't get an opportunity to interview him. Do you think that makes sense?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding of it.
Okay. Now, when counsel for Mr. Depp was reading to you the Goldwater
rude?
rule, there were two words that he kind of went over pretty quickly, and I'm going to go over them again with you a little bit slower. And that was that the Goldwater rule was that you cannot make an armchair diagnosis, right?
Objection.
Based on, quote,
Okay.
publicly available records. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the records that you reviewed in this case were private, were they not?
Yes.
And in fact, Dr. Blaustein's records were marked confidential, correct?
Yes.
And his deposition was marked confidential?
Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Kipper's records were all marked confidential?
Yes.
Objection leading.
And
I'll sustain.
okay, what if any labeling was there on Dr. Kipper's deposition?
All the documents I reviewed were confidential, and I also signed the confidentiality agreement, so everything I looked at was confidential.
Okay, so that in fact does not even comport, that doesn't meet the restrictions that were put.
Objection leading.
I mean, so would it be fair to say that you have not, or have you rendered any opinions in this case as an expert witness based on publicly available records?
I have not rendered any opinion based on any publicly available records.
Wait, what?
Thank you. Now, you were asked a number of questions about narcissistic traits and your diagnosis or findings that Mr. Depp exhibited narcissistic traits or had that disorder. Do you recall that testimony?
Huh?
Yes.
All right, and the question was asked of you of the whether if you have 5 of 9 narcissistic traits. Do you remember that testimony?
This is Amber NPC,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, one of the ones you testified before was for narcissism, it requires admiration, correct?
Yes.
What, if any, record evidence was there that Mr. Depp requires admiration?
The very people that surround him need to admire him, or they're no longer in his employment or his working circle.
Okay.
How did-
The second one that you discussed was sense of entitlement. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
All right. What record evidence is there that Mr. Depp exhibits behavior of needing a sense of entitlement?
So again, thinking that Ms. Heard was marrying him solely for his money and his influence, and that was the case, was, in my opinion, very entitled.
All right. And the third one you discussed was exploitative. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits behaviors that are exploitative?
Again, I think the whole concept of abuse is exploitative.
Okay. The fourth one was lacks empathy. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits lacking empathy?
To be able to commit intimate partner violence and the control you have over someone.
Yeah, she did, Elon. I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but I mean, she
Can I
ain't.
be heard?
You know.
Okay.
I have to go peel up.
I'm just going to ask you to give the record evidence of Mr. Depp's lacking empathy that you know of.
Yes. Am I allowed to elaborate?
Yes,
Okay.
just a little different than what you said before.
Okay. So if one does, so I'll make it more direct. So if you're not agreeing with what Mr. Depp has to say, you are no longer useful. Okay. Therefore, you don't really care about others for others. You care about others for your benefit. So off and on dismissing Dr. Kipper, for Dr. Kipper setting some boundaries on substance use protocol, substance detox, is an example of lacking empathy and not really caring what other people have to say.
All right. Another one of the characteristics that you cited was envious. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
What is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits envy?
I think jealousy is a good start for that. I think that Ms. Heard wanting to have a career, start with that, beyond what she has, and the jealousy parts with Mr. Franco and I think others commented this week. Last week Ms. Burston commented about things about jealousy. So I think it's pretty apparent.
Okay. And the next one you listed was fragile self-esteem. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
And what is the record evidence of Mr. Depp exhibiting that?
So fragile self-esteem would be more along the line of a cluster B trait. I should put that in. It's not necessarily the criteria for narcissism, so it's a trait. And basically what that means will be that the combination of poor self-control and rapid mood states is fragile self-esteem, fragile personality, so traits. So it would go in the line of cluster B rather than per se narcissistic.
All right, now we've seen Mr. Depp during this trial doodling and eating candy. What, if any, evidence would that suggest that he has narcissistic traits?
Objection, Your Honor.
What the fuck?
Objection.
Okay.
Needing candy?
Now,
What if you just want candy?
we're asked about the cluster B.
Okay, I need it, but still.
And counsel for Mr. Depp came back and said, are you aware Ms. Heard has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder? Now, you reviewed, I think you testified at the beginning, you reviewed the therapy and counseling and medical records for Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
What, if any, evidence was there that Bonnie Jacobs diagnosed Amber Heard with either borderline personality or a histrionic personality disorder?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's fair.
doesn't have those, yeah.
He asked the question. That's fair. Redirect.
It's beyond the scope.
It's not
Overruled.
Thank you.
So if I could start, Ms. Jacobs demonstrated no type of personality disorder, borderline or otherwise. And on a review of Dr. Curry's records.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
I'll ask each of them separately. And you also reviewed the therapy records for Ms. Heard for Colonel Cowan, correct?
Yes.
What, if any, evidence was there at any time that he diagnosed Amber Heard with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
Not only did he not, he referred to Mr. Depp as a narcissist.
Okay. Now, you also reviewed all of Dawn Hughes' records and her testing, correct?
Yes.
And what, if any, evidence did you find in any of that extensive testing and note-taking that she had found that Amber Heard had borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
Objection leading.
What, if any?
Overruled.
None.
Okay. And you also reviewed Dr. Curry's notes and her testing, correct?
Yes.
All right. And what, if any, evidence did you find in any of Dr. Curry's testing that Amber Heard had either borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
She had traits she did not meet the full, on her own evaluation, she did not have the full endorse enough criteria to meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder and or histrionic personality disorder. She definitely had traits. She did not have the disorder by going by the strict number of criteria.
All right. Now, you mentioned in response to Mr. Depp's counsel's questions, you started to talk about battered wife syndrome. What is your experience with battered wife syndrome? Sometimes being mistaken with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder.
Objection compound and leading.
Overruled.
Oh, wow.
So battered wife syndrome, which is more subsyndromal or not quite PTSD, has 70 symptoms of PTSD. And if you hear some of them, you'll see why someone might think that. They do have reliving experiences as if feeling as if the abuse is happening, even if it's not upon reminders of abuse, such as getting ready to use something, getting ready to use a substance or something along that line. They do have hyperarousal. They do have hypervigilance, which is very easily mistaken for the emotional reactivity of borderline personality disorder. They do have avoidance symptoms, so they avoid emotions, activities, people, and if that can't be happening, they start becoming much more anxious, much more hyper-aroused. They have disturbances in relationships, which clearly can be an issue. Intimacy problems, again, which could also resemble borderline personality disorder. So those description and traits that were there, A, did not meet the full criteria for borderline, and B, could readily easily be explained by battered wife syndrome, a form of PTSD.
Thank you. Now, you also indicated earlier that you reviewed the deposition of Amy Banks, correct?
Yes.
And what, if any, determinations did you make based on her deposition from her meetings with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
So Dr. Banks is a professor who at Harvard, the leading institution in America for medical schools, who's an expert on intimate partner violence. She had a chance to meet them in relationship counseling.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
That's not non-responsive. I said, what, if anything, did she find?
Sustained.
All right. Tell the jury about Amy Banks, the significance of Amy Banks.
So what Dr. Banks found was that she fully believed Ms. Heard's version of what was going on.
Objection, hearsay.
I reversed those. Let me do it again. Please tell the jury.
Sustain the objection.
Please tell the jury what about the qualifications of Dr. Amy Banks. This is the one who saw both Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp.
Dr. Banks is a professor at, I don't know whether it's assistant associate professor at Harvard University Medical School, one, if not one of the two top medical schools in the world, who specialize in intimate partner violence. She is, above all people, who understand if someone is victim, perpetrator, because she does this, researches this for a living every day. And that's her qualifications. Can I say what she reported?
Then I'm going to ask you, what, if anything, did Dr. Banks indicate relating to histrionic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder for Ms. Heard?
Dr. Banks didn't mention anything about personality disorder at all. What she did mention was whom she felt gave a more accurate version of...
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
That's a credibility testimony.
I think he can testify to that.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. What, if anything, did Dr. Banks report, not saying what the ultimate conclusion was, what, if anything, did Dr. Banks say about what was reported to her by Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp and how they responded?
So Ms. Heard discussed the, in trying to, again, as the victim, trying to save the relationship, discussed with Dr. Banks these accusations, these facts of intimate partner violence. Mr. Depp.
Objection, hearsay.
I think he's entitled to rely on hearsay, and he's not given what ultimately was. He's entitled to it. That's my.
You can rely on hearsay, but you just can't state the hearsay. So you can rely on it.
All right. What, if anything, did Mr. Depp do in response?
Mr. Depp said nothing when Ms. Heard accused him of intimate partner violence. Mr. Depp said nothing.
And what is the significance?
Objection,
of that?
hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right.
Oh my God.
What is the significance of that?
The significance of that is with...
Objection, no foundation.
Sustain.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. You were asked about MDMA and what the impact could potentially be of taking 8 to 10 of these pills. Do you recall?
You'd go nuts. You'd go nuts.
Okay. And now I'm going to take you to Australia 2015.
You're hallucinating.
You
100%.
testimony over that, right, from Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard,
Yes.
and a number. Okay. Do you recall that Ms. Heard also said that she found dime bags of cocaine in drawers at the end of that 3 days?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up 1828? It's already in evidence.
Let's see it.
And if we could publish that to, okay, we can.
Yeah, it's
Thank
him.
you.
We saw this earlier. Yeah, it is.
I'm going to, this is one of the pictures that was taken in Australia, and the testimony's been that these two canvases of Ms. Heard's were painted completely over. Is that something that could be the impact of having 8 to 10 tablets of MDMA and combining that with cocaine and alcohol?
Objection, no foundation.
Yeah, what the fuck
Speculation.
is that?
The foundation's already been laid, Your Honor. That's
Sustain the objection. Next question.
okay. What, if anything, if you look at the painted canvases on this one, what, if any, evidence is that reflecting behaviors indicative of taking a lot of MDMA,
Bro,
cocaine, and alcohol?
You'd be
Objection,
rubbing your chest on the
speculation,
fucking
no
carpet,
foundation.
dude.
Question. Sustain.
You'd be blasting music, dude. Literally scrubbing your chest on the carpet, or like
You
fucking,
testified earlier
Dude.
about
fucking on
property,
the.
destruction of property. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell the jury how that relates to the correlating
my
factors,
camera, is it
of risk
working?
factors for IPV?
Again, destruction of property is a form of psychological abuse, psychological mistreatment. And so destruction of property is used as intimidation and as means of control.
Okay. Michelle, can you bring up 1829?
Huh? What about the other
And this
question?
has already been admitted. Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And what, if any, evidence does this reflect as correlating behavior to risk factors of IPV?
I would say that one, that demonstrates a good deal of violence and psychological abuse. I think it's pretty clear that they're trying to be intimidating. I don't think.
Objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please continue.
It would be people who would misuse ecstasy without cocaine, are prone to agitation, suspicion, jealousy, violence. What we're seeing there would be very consistent with that presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle, can you now bring up 1830, I guess? And that's already been admitted into evidence as well, Your Honor. I'd ask that it be published. And what, if any, evidence does this correlate with behavior indicative of IPV perpetration?
Again, this is intimidation, psychological abuse, where you're solely trying to emotionally.
Objection, Your Honor. Can we be heard?
Okay, if you want.
It's a lamp. It's a mirror. I don't know. Like, I guess you could be right. Yeah, it could be evidence of that, but like I don't know. Because I just don't like the way this guy phrased everything. I think it's kind of annoying. I think he knows what he's doing. It's almost like he's dog whistling a little bit. I think that's just kind of fucking lame. It is lame. I'm not even coping. It is lame as fuck. Anything could be evidence of whatever.
Dr. Spiegel,
Anything at all.
If you can answer the question, what, if any, evidence is this correlating to the risk
I
factors?
could displace
for
your
IPV
shoes
perpetration?
in the house every day.
Again, I think
That could be evidence
comes
of
through.
whatever.
with the risk
Objection,
factor.
Your Honor.
Just the evidence
strike.
of risk factors, if you
right.
can.
I'm sorry. The evidence of risk factor would be accepting a more than average degree of violence, as well as psychological abuse.
Okay. Are you aware of any record evidence of Ms. Heard writing on walls, mirrors, countertops, or painting canvases?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. You can take that down now. Now, you were also asked about Seroquel. and some of the other prescription medications. Did you, during the course of your review of evidence, see the lists of medications that Mr. Depp was on at one point?
Yes, I read that list.
Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bring up Defendant's Exhibit 301.
Okay.
And Dr. Spiegel, it's not into evidence yet. I'm going to ask you to take a look at this. Is this one of the documents that you had that reflected the amount of medication that Mr. Depp was on as of October 26, 2014?
Yes.
Okay. And this was an email from Debbie Lloyd to Dr. Blaustein, his treating psychiatrist, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jury that we've got Seroquel, 50 mg? Can you just
Objection,
tell,
hearsay.
Can you just tell the jury? I haven't finished asking the question yet. So,
Let's approach.
okay.
Oof. You know what is very normal behavior and not weird or violent? Dude, writing in the lampshade? Nah, no shot, dude. Shitting on the bed? Pog champ. That, dude, nothing wrong with that. That is pretty normal, acceptable interpersonal behavior. Yeah. Take a fat, disgusting shit on the bed where you sleep on. Fuck it, dude. Also, we checked the writing last time. Some of the writing on the mirror was literally her writing. She can't hide that. Some of the writing was literally her writing. I don't know why they're all cooperating to lie on their oath. It doesn't make sense. Maybe because they know it's not gonna get I don't get it. They know it's gonna work, or they're gonna get away with it. I don't get it. Why lie about that? It's such a small deal.
Just so I can see all of them at the same time. Thank you. So, Dr.
We analyzed the writing last time.
Siegel, if someone was taking 50 milligrams of Seroquel,
Jesus, madam.
25 milligrams of Seroquel, and 50 milligrams of Seroquel, and 50 all in one day,
Megatits.
how would that impact them?
So, obviously, this is not for sleep, because I'm presuming you're not wanting to sleep in the morning, noon, and from 4 to 6, although you're sleeping at night. What I would say is he's using it for one purpose. As I say, with substance use disorder, they're using it to calm down. They're using it just as a down and to relax. And given that you're taking 45 milligrams of Adderall a day to stay awake, and that's more than the prescribed for adults and children, for that matter. The combination makes very little sense at all to me.
And if a person was taking 300 milligrams of Neurotin, I'm going to pronounce that wrong again, 4 times a day and 600 later in the day, how would that impact?
Again, you're looking at medications that are there solely for a substance use disorder patient to get them up and to calm them down. That's all this regimen is about. Gabapentin doesn't have a psychiatric indication, other than actually doesn't have a psychiatric indication, although it does calm you down. And as I may have intimated before, similar to Adderall, gabapentin is also abusable. Cimetidine, Seroquel is also abusable. So you're getting these kind of unusually calming effects from these medicines, while at the same time getting what's called a super therapeutic dose, or an excessive amount of Adderall. And for the record book, adults are only indicated with Adderall for the extended release, not the immediate release preparation. And why that's relevant is the immediate release preparation is more abusable. You get more high quicker. The extended release goes out throughout the day. The immediate release gets you up right away.
That's true.
Now in ADHD,
never heard about that.
this medicine is very effective. But from what this is being used for, clearly based on the combination.
Never heard about that. I'm dumb.
All right. Do addicts lie?
Yes.
All right. Now, you were asked about Mr. Depp passing out.
Everybody
Do
lies.
you recall reading testimony of Mr. Depp passing out in the bathroom in his vomit?
Yes.
Okay. Does that help refresh your recollection of what you
Yes.
recall?
I mean, for the record book, I don't think that falling asleep with ice cream on you is a...
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
Keep going.
I don't think taking Seroquel at night and falling asleep with ice cream on you is not what Seroquel is indicated for. It's not meant to put you out in a state where you don't even be able to stay awake to put ice cream away.
All right. Michelle, if you can pull up defendant's 1090. That's already into evidence. If we can publish that to the jury, Your Honor.
Of course, they've been reaching all day.
Does this look like, I mean, would this be evidence correlating with behaviors consistent with IPV perpetrator risk factors?
This would be correlated a person who is completely knocked out, and it's usually only one way someone gets knocked out that badly, and that's with pharmacological assistance, whether it be legal or illegal. They make it to the bed. They don't sleep with their head on a game box in a furniture.
What?
That doesn't happen to people who sleep, no matter how tired you are. No matter how tired. I've been a resident in the past, and I was up for 40, 45 hours.
Objection beyond the scope.
It's just explained, Your Honor.
Sustained.
All right. Michelle, can you pull up 1095, please?
Game box Andy.
And I'm going to ask you the same question, Dr. Spiegel. What, if anything, does this indicate relating to risk factors for IPV perpetrators?
Again, colloquially
That's
passed
it.
out, and
We
there's
found the
very few
perpetrator,
ways
boys.
to get like that without pharmacological assistance.
GG's.
Legal or illegal, or illegal.
And then let's pull up 1094, please, Michelle.
Chills.
Defense, and that's also been admitted. And now we have the ice cream picture.
That is not vomit also, by the way.
And what, if any, indication does this have?
Probably could see how I could mistake that.
Objection, speculation, no foundation.
What, if any, correlation, what, if any, evidence does this indicate correlative with the risk factors for IPV perpetrators?
Again,
Least basic coffee ice cream
one of the
enjoyer.
major risk factors and precipitating factors for intimate partner violence.
Objection,
You are a
move
subject.
to strike.
All right, sustained. I'll strike it from the record. Next question.
We'll just move on.
Okay.
You were asked about earpieces. Do you recall reviewing Tracy Jacobs and Joel Mandel's depositions?
Yes.
All right. And do you recall them both testifying that Mr. Depp had someone on salary to feed him his lines?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've testified that you reviewed a substantial amount of evidence in this case. Did you find any evidence that Amber Heard exhibited conduct or behaviors indicative or consistent with any of the risk factors for perpetrators of IPV?
Don't cap.
Objection beyond the scope.
Don't cap.
Sustained.
Well, it was suggested with the borderline personality.
Sustained.
Okay.
Damn, she
But
tried
you
it.
did find that for Mr. Depp, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find record evidence that Mr. Depp had a substance abuse disorder?
Severe substance use disorder.
All right. Did any of the questions asked by Mr. Depp's counsel change any of your opinions in this case?
Nothing there. No, not my opinion has not been swayed an iota.
Okay. Do you hold them all still within a reasonable degree of medical and psychiatric probability or certainty?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spiegel.
All right, thank you. Sir, you can have a seat in the courtroom or you're free to go. Thank you.
Wait,
All right,
that's
your
it?
next witness,
My next witness is Catherine Arnold.
Catherine Arnold.
What the fuck is that?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case with counsel of law? Thank you.
All right, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Will you please state your name for the record?
Catherine Arnold.
All right. And what is your profession? I am an entertainment industry consultant, and I also serve as an expert witness.
Okay. And can you please tell the jury your educational background?
Yes. So I've been in the entertainment industry for over 20 plus years. I started as an assistant at ICM, which is one of the largest talent agencies in Los Angeles that represents actors, writers, and directors. And I worked with the talent agent there. And then I also worked at William Morris, for William Morris as a script reader. So I was working on scripts that they were delivered and submitted to for their actors, writers, directors. After that, I went into development of film and television projects for a company based in New York called the Maltese Company, which actually produced animated television shows and feature films based on Wall Street, animated product, like toys. And then I went to work with a company called the Goober Peters Company. And Goober Peters was, at the time, one of the largest production companies in Los Angeles. They did films like Batman and Rain Man. And Tango and Cash. They did TV shows like Witches of Eastwick. And there I was involved in the development of scripts. We worked with the studio directly in terms of what cast would be attached to the scripts and brought directors and talent to those projects. I then went on to work in, there's a lot. I went on to work in the independent film world as a film producer. So I found the material, I would get the financing, I would get the cast and the director attached to the project. We call that packaging. And then we would go and obtain financing for that either through equity sources or international sales and financing and bank financing. And then I also went on after that. I produced 5 or 6 films with actors that you may know, including Salma Hayek, Vincent D'Onofrio, Kirstie Alley, Thomas Jane, Ethan Hawke.
Absolutely not.
And then I worked with a international sales and production company where I was the head of production, and I worked again on the development of scripts and the procurement of financing. So I worked in both the independent world and the studio world, meaning independently financed or financed by the big studios like Warner Brothers and Disney and Paramount and such as that. That's the bulk of my work in the entertainment industry.
Did any of your films win awards?
A couple of them did. So a couple of the independent films that I produced, one of them won, called The Coriolis Effect, won the Venice Film Festival in its category. And then I also produced another film that won the Heartland Film Festival Award. It's called the Crystal Award.
Sick, man.
And what other video production projects have you been involved in?
So throughout that time, in between those jobs, I also worked in the corporate world. So large studios like Warner Brothers and Disney and CBS would need corporate videos for their live events. So I would interview executives and interview their talent.
I will watch this one in a minute because I don't
create video and media for their live sales conferences that they had at that time. And then I also produced some commercials.
All right. And what, if any, experience did you have in corporate relations and licensing?
So early on in my career, I worked at the Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee.
No shots.
And I worked in the licensing department where we handled the licensing of the Olympic logo. And we also worked with sponsors and suppliers who were funding those Olympic Games. So it was a lot of contractual negotiations with the use of the logo, as well as raising money for the games and working with those corporate sponsors throughout the 2 years prior to the games and then during the games themselves.
And what, if any, experience do you have working on film festivals?
Well, I've had films in festivals. I've actually been very lucky to travel the world and gone to a lot of festivals with my films, both here in the United States and elsewhere. And at one point, I was also hired to raise sponsorship funds for the Sundance Film Festival. They had a new program where they were starting to do online festivals. And so I raised about $500,000 for them in about a month.
All right. And do you have a degree, a college degree?
Yes, I graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's degree in economics.
Cool.
What does your current consulting practice entail?
So as an entertainment consultant, having been in the business in both the independent and the studio worlds as both a producer and an executive, I work with investment companies and production companies who are looking to navigate the various inroads of Hollywood. It's a business that's very different and unlike anything else, very relationship-based. So I use my 20 years of experience to help them get cast, get financing, understand the distribution process, the marketing process, and get them set up to be able to produce their films.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness in the field of entertainment industry?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how many times have you served as an expert?
I've been involved in somewhere between 85 and 100 cases as an expert, from beginning stages to testifying in court.
And have you ever testified as an expert on damages and defamation cases?
Yes, I have.
100?
Approximately how many times have you qualified as an expert on that?
On defamation?
Yes.
I believe 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
Wait, that's the final boss.
Have you ever been admitted to testify as an expert on damages?
Yes.
Okay, and how many times have you qualified as an expert on damages?
Almost all my cases have some form of damage, economic damage related to the case. So I would say in all of the cases that I've testified in, I've been qualified in damages.
Okay. Have you ever served as an expert for both? Have you served as an expert for both plaintiffs and defendants?
Yes, I have.
Okay. How much of your current practice involves consulting as opposed to serving as an expert witness?
So over the last 10 or 12 years, it's been about 50-50. So I spend half my time working as a consultant and the other half working with lawyers on their cases.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to qualify Catherine Arnold as an expert in the entertainment industry, standards and practices, and related economic damages.
All right. Any objection?
Wait a
All right,
minute.
so moved.
Thank you. Now, you have a dual role here as an expert, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're going to be testifying with respect to Mr. Depp's challenges to or claims of damages, and you're also going to be testifying to Amber Heard's damages, correct?
Yes.
Wait,
All right.
her damages?
I'm going to start you with Mr. Depp's claims for damages.
Okay.
With respect to Mr. Depp's claimed damages, on what subject have you been asked to offer your opinion?
So I was asked to assess any alleged damages that the op-ed piece in the Washington Post that Ms. Heard wrote, whether that have impacted his career in any way, particularly
I know he's kind of suing, but it's just ironic.
Any economic opportunities because of the op-ed piece specifically.
All right. And have you been asked to limit that to the period of December 18, 2018, with the date of the op-ed, through November 2, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what materials did you review in making your analysis?
There were a lot of documents. I reviewed the pleadings of the case, the complaints, the discovery items, the responses to what they call interrogatories, which are the questions that the lawyers ask both sides. I reviewed Mr. Depp's deposition testimony, which there were volumes of that, as well as Ms. Heard's. I also reviewed the deposition testimony of the experts that were proffered that had to do with the entertainment industry, the agents and the management teams of both sides.
Stop looking at me, man.
Ron Schnell, the data expert. I also reviewed emails and texts between the parties, between their families, between their management teams, the audio recordings, the visual recordings that have been presented in this case and the previous cases that have been involved in the last couple of years. I also did my own independent research from general publicity and press and investigative articles, as well as those that are specific to the entertainment industry, and utilized some entertainment industry specific sources to get some information that was helpful to my case, to the case.
Thank you, Ms. Arnold. Please describe for the jury your observations with respect to Mr. Depp's career trajectory.
Well, Mr. Depp has had an extraordinary career over many years, so it's a long one to look at. Obviously, he was a rising star in the late 80s and in the 90s, starting with 21 Jump Street, and you've heard, all the films that I'm sure he's been in. He really started to break through when he worked with Tim Burton, the director, and of course his character Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean was world renowned. And probably his biggest role. And he was, a well-liked, both critically and within the industry and within the public as a movie star. And at the same time, his behavior and both on and off the set, in his personal life and in his professional life, start to interfere with what we would say, what everybody saw was his great talent. And it started, there's some stories of issues that started back in the 80s and the 90s, but I would say really in the mid-2000s, between 2006 and 10, is when the behavior started affecting his work to a certain extent in terms of lateness on set.
He wasn't
and
at
then,
his
as
prime.
Ms. Jacobs, his talent agent, discussed with you in her deposition,
He was
it really
priming.
started to affect her ability to get roles and the industry's willingness to work with him, given the issues that he was having with both behavior, tardiness, drinking, and the drug abuse, and
Chat user touch payments free 30 days.
other issues in his
Emotes,
personal life.
juice,
So it got more
success, women,
complicated for
money.
her to find him work, and I think it got harder for production companies and studios to hire him due to the challenges that would put on a production.
And
Twitch
when did
account,
Mr.
Amazon Prime
Depp's
account.
career downturn begin, based on your review of all the record evidence?
Well, again, according to Ms. Jacobs, his agent, she mentioned that it started getting more challenging for her around 2010. The lateness on set was being made, she was being made aware of that more and more often from production executives and the producers that she was working with on the Pirates movie. And not only Pirates, it continued on the other films, including Mordecai and Murder on the Orient Express. And in around 2014, when he had the appearance, it was presumed that he was under the effects of alcohol at the Hollywood Film Awards in 2014.
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh,
Non-responsive.
boo-hoo.
She's answering
Oh,
the
my
career
God.
downturn, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Please continue.
Thank you. In 2014, when Mr. Depp appeared in the Hollywood Film Awards, Ms. Jacobs received many phone calls from both producers, casting directors, and production executives asking her what is going on with your client, why, what's going on with his behavior, can we get him under control? And then I think it really started to shift around the Pirates 5 movie in Australia with, again, the lateness and the issues with the finger that stopped production and things of that nature, and then it got harder and harder.
Now, based on your analysis, what has caused Mr. Depp's career downturn?
Objection. No
Lack of
foundation.
foundation.
Overruled.
Can you please repeat the question?
Based on your analysis, what has caused Mr. Depp's career downturn? And I realize you've said a number of those, so just, is there anything else?
Sure. Well, we've talked about the erratic behavior, the tardiness, the drugs and alcohol abuse, and the lawsuits have had a really big impact, not just this lawsuit, but previous lawsuits that Mr. Depp has been involved with, because there's a lot of publicity around anything that he does. And every time he has filed a lawsuit, it has brought to light various issues with respect to whatever that lawsuit was about, whether it was about, erratic behavior or domestic abuse or drugs and alcohol and even spending habits. So every time a lawsuit has been filed,
Spending
the press and
habits.
the publicity has just been charged up and brought everything back to light. And it's been an unfortunate problem on that level for the industry to continue to work with him, even though all this is out in the public.
For the films that were shortly before Pirates 5, how successful were they? We're talking Mordecai, Alice Through the Looking Glass. I think you testified to some of those. The Lone Ranger, Tonto.
Right.
Objection. Compound.
Overruled.
Also, he's an actor, not a producer.
Of course, Mr. Depp has had some extremely successful films, but also in the,
Unless?
the 4 or 5 years prior and through Pirates, there were films that didn't do well at all and were considered what the industry calls a bomb, which could have been Alice Through the Looking Glass, The Transcendence, the Lone Ranger, and Mordecai were films that just didn't perform, although they were valued in their financing based on Mr. Depp's star quality and acting ability. Unfortunately, they just didn't perform. So as many hits as he's had, he's also had a lot of recent, what they call failures in the business.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to showing up for a press conference in Japan for Mordecai?
Ms. Jacobs mentioned in her deposition testimony that Mr. Depp didn't show up for the press conference in Mordecai, which he was not only an actor for, he was also a producer, and he didn't show up. Apparently, he was sleeping, so he wasn't able to make it.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
No.
That's it.
What, if any, impact did the Brooks litigation have on Mr. Depp's career?
Is the jury familiar with this already, or?
Well, I think you can go, I mean.
Okay, so the Brooks litigation was, there was a litigation around Mr. Depp had punched someone on one of the, I think it was a location manager, on the set of a film called City of Lies. I don't know exactly what happened to that litigation. However, of course, again, it was written a lot about in the press, and unfortunately came to the forefront that he had, violent behavior yet again.
So in 2018, and I'm going to say before the op-ed on December 18, 2018, right, was there any negative articles, negative press about Mr. Depp?
For quite a while, when you're a celebrity such as Mr. Depp, you're in the limelight and everybody wants to look at everything that happens. So after every movie or after every incident, there was usually press. But the ones that were more significant were the ones in the Hollywood, a couple of them in the Hollywood Reporter and one in the Rolling Stone. So in 2017, there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter where the journalist discussed, I think the article was called Pirates of the Caribbean, The Diminishing Returns of Johnny Depp. And
how is it only
that
him?
Pirates, the last one was 5, right? And that one didn't perform nearly as well as the other previous Pirates of the Caribbean films. And there was some discussion that the character...
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I think you could explain generally.
Sustained.
Okay. Let me ask you this. When was that Hollywood Reporter article on diminishing returns of Johnny Depp?
That was in the spring of 2017.
Okay. And you said, and I just want to make sure we understand, how well did
that
Pirates
smile?
5 do
She's so
compared
weird.
to 1 through 4?
It performed less well by over $200 million.
Okay.
That number is irrelevant if you
What
don't
if
have the
any
scale for
other
it.
negative press was there in this time frame? We'll take 2017, 2018, before the op-ed.
So in 2018, there was the Rolling Stones article that was an in-depth expose on Mr. Depp's life. Again, his erratic behavior, the money he was spending on wine.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I think she can give generally, Your Honor, the negative.
Sustained.
All right. What, if any, knowledge do you have of whether Disney saw the Rolling Stone article?
There were emails between the publicity department and the co-chairs and some of the senior executive Disney that they would forward the articles as they came out, both the Hollywood Reporter article and the Rolling Stones article, and they would make commentary. And Alan Horn, who is the one of the co-chairs of Disney, used the word sad, and I think one of the other executives used depressing, that their film star was now being shown in this light to the public in a Rolling Stones magazine.
Objection, hearsay.
Wow, that's insane.
All right. Was there any more articles about the Pirates of the Caribbean prior to the op-ed in December of 2018?
There was an article in October 28th, the Hollywood Reporter, October 28th, 2018, where the journalist had spoken to 2 writers of the film, and they were talking
Objection,
about rebooting
hearsay.
the franchise.
She's entitled to rely on hearsay, and she's just giving the general. She's not.
Approach.
Oh my God. It's not that I'm mauling with it. It's just because that accuracy is important. Like 200 mil can be not a lot if the movie is like billions and shit. right? Also, when your franchise is going to 5, Pirates 5, dude, you're bound to see a diminishing return at one point. That's just how franchises are, dude. That they're doing it because they like it. They know it's going to be good. At the same time, it's kind of running its course. They're trying to milk it. Everybody does that. It's like, how is that a secret of the trade? People milk it as much as possible when it's a big successful series, especially Disney. What about it? How can you judge the entirety of the movie's success based on the one actor? There's only so much he can do. The marketing, the funding, the brand, the health of the economy, the production, the budget, the people, the staff, the locations, the schedule. Like, there's the writing. There's thousands of things that could go wrong.
So without saying what the article said, say what it's about.
Okay. So in October 28th, the article was about whether the Pirates of the Caribbean
Objection,
franchise
hearsay.
would be rebooted without...
Overruled.
Yeah, I'll fix the mic. I'm sorry about that.
In the article in October 2018 was about whether or not the Pirates franchise was going to be what they call redefined without Johnny Depp. And that was regarding 2 writers that were on the project.
Okay.
And there was one other one I'd like
Okay,
to
go
talk
ahead,
about.
please.
So there was another article, there was an expose on the president and production. It was also in the Hollywood Reporter. And this is the one that Mr. Marks, Mr. Depp's expert, pointed to regarding the op-ed's impact on Mr. Depp's career. And the online article was, as Mr. Marks pointed out, published on December 20th of 2018. But the same article was in print on the morning of December 18th, 2018, which is the same morning of the op-ed. So that Hollywood Reporter article that Mr. Marks used to say...
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Please continue.
Mr. Marks had used that article to show that Disney wanted to let go of Mr. Depp because of the op-ed, but it was actually printed in the Reporter the same morning that the Washington Post article was printed. So there's no way that the Washington Post article had any impact on what the Hollywood Reporter journalist wrote. So they were on the same morning. They were released simultaneously, interestingly enough.
And the one that was 2 days later was the same article, just online?
Same article, just online, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, what, if anything, was there about press in 2018 relating to The Sun and Dan Wooten and any litigation that Mr. Depp...
Interestingly enough, she says it.
So a lot of press was about the UK trial in the lawsuit that Mr. Depp brought against the Sun in the UK about the wife beater title that they used. So there was a ton of press around that, both at the time that it was filed and throughout as documents were being shared with the public, and then, of course, during the trial itself.
Okay. And what is your understanding of when the article, the wife beater article, first appeared?
The Sun, of course.
I believe it was in July of 2018, about 6 months before the op-ed piece.
And what is your understanding of when Mr. Depp filed suit against The Sun and Mr. Wooten?
Again, in 2018, I believe.
Okay. June, would it be? Would it refresh your recollection?
It was in the spring or summer. It was fairly shortly after the article, so it was long before the op-ed piece was out.
Okay. And what, if any, impact did Mr. Depp's litigation in the Sun case have on his career?
That was a really tough one on Mr. Depp's career, because every allegation of abuse and every text, every email, all the audio, all the visual stuff was brought to light and made public. And so not only did the public get to see it, but the industry was watching closely. And it's hard for studios, especially a studio like Disney, who's family-oriented, be connected to a star that has texts about burnt corpses and violent behavior in video. So it was a big conflict for a lot of the people in the industry to how to navigate that if they're going to work with a star.
And what, if any, impact did Mr. Depp's other litigation against Mandel and Bloom have during that time period?
as I was trying to say earlier, every time Mr. Depp brings a lawsuit, because he's such a well-known public figure, the spotlight goes on him. So every time a lawsuit was filed, whether it was to his against his business manager, against his former lawyer, even when he fired his talent agent, it becomes news. And then everybody talks about what could have preceded that. Why would that lawsuit have happened? And then they look at the details. So again, the erratic behavior and the financial issues and the drinking and drug abuse was all part and parcel of every one of those. And it was brought to light yet again each time.
What is your understanding of Mr. Depp's claims regarding Pirates of the Caribbean 6 and how that impacted?
Well, Mr. Depp is claiming that he's lost money on Pirate 6, but Pirate 6 hasn't even been made yet, nor is there even a script that has been what we call greenlit, moved towards production. So I don't know how you lose something that hasn't happened. So
What?
I think that's what you're looking for me to.
And in fact, since Mr. Depp's damages are limited November
Is she smoking crack?
2020 and nothing since, and that hasn't happened, is there any way he could claim damages for Pirate 6?
Well,
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Again, you can't claim damages for something that hasn't even happened, whether he was in it or not in it, or was going to be in it, or might have been in it, whether it was 2018 or now. There just is no Pirate 6.
There's no Jack Sparrow
contract even back in the day, 2018 or after that. No contract had been signed for a Pirate 6. It doesn't exist as we.
Objection legal conclusion.
Sustain the last part.
How do you know he doesn't have a legal contract?
Well, Ms. Jacobs said he didn't have a legal contract, and also his agents at CAA said he had not yet negotiated a contract for Pirate 6. And again, there is no script, so they haven't greenlit it, as we say. They don't have it cast or with the director yet.
They have no.
Based on your analysis,
Pirates.
what, if any, impact did Ms. Heard's op-ed have on whether Mr. Depp could claim a loss for Pirate 6?
No Jack Sparrow. What are they going to do?
And why do you say that?
Again,
No pirates?
Well, many things. The movie doesn't exist yet, so that's one. But even as important is that Disney, in their file for this trial, did not have the op-ed piece as part of all of the information they had read and looked about and discussed. The conversations of Mr. Depp not being in whatever new version of Pirates, the franchise that goes forward, those were in discussions long before the op-ed piece even came out. And there are other factors that Disney was considering: the lateness on set, the cost overruns that costs, which can go from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars when you have crews sitting around for 2 to 4 hours, 8 hours, or even several weeks to a month when the finger incident happened. So on top of that, Mr. Depp is an expensive actor. He can earn between $20 and $25 million per movie plus back end. So it's very expensive. So when you put that all together, the rising cost of Mr. Depp as talent, the challenges that they had to keep it on budget because of his lateness and his tardiness, and all the other allegations that would affect a brand such as Disney, right? Someone talks about a burnt corpse, does not necessarily coincide with the brand of Disney. So there were many problems, and interestingly enough, there was a lot of conversation internally in the industry.
Objection, hearsay.
She's entitled to rely on hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained. You can't say it's hearsay.
All right. Please continue without saying what the discussion in the industry was.
The Jack Sparrow character had been exhausted in terms of where it could go creatively, and I think the studio is looking for a way for it to renew the franchise, but not necessarily base it entirely on the Jack Sparrow character, which is where it had ended up the last couple of years.
I wonder why.
And evidenced by the lesser box office of Pirates 5 compared to the earlier ones.
Right. And was there any article that came out on November 5, 2020, 3 days after the damages are cut off, relating to Pirates of the Caribbean and Mr. Depp's chances of being Jack Sparrow?
I think they reiterated the fact that he was probably not going to be in the movie.
Okay. Now,
What impact has the op-ed had on Mr. Depp's career?
That goes hand in hand?
Very little. Hardly anybody even knew the op-ed existed before he filed suit.
Okay.
If anybody that I know, but certainly not Disney.
Okay. And what impact has the op-ed had on Mr. Depp's Q scores?
According to what I read of Mr. Alan Jacobs, an expert in statistical analysis, and from my own research on websites that are available to us, Mr. Depp's Q score, or if you're familiar with IMDb, which is Internet Movie Database, which is available to public and to the professional side, his Q score did not change dramatically. It was kind of in the middle of exactly the high and low of his Q scores overall. It was in the middle. It was at 113, which is where it was a couple weeks before and a couple weeks after. So the op-ed didn't have any effect on his Q score, and that was reiterated by Mr. Jacobs in his deposition testimony.
And then you testified in response to an earlier question I had that people, or that nobody seemed to notice the op-ed until Mr. Depp filed suit. Now, that was on March 1, 2019. Do you recall?
Yes, that's when the lawsuit was filed.
Is
And
IND public voting?
They didn't notice until then.
because the op-ed piece for most people in the industry kind of came and went without much fanfare or much conversation. It was much more about the, I don't think very many people even know it was written.
I'm going to hire Johnny Depp. Let's check his IMDb.
Mr. Depp in the lawsuit.
What?
Kind of
Nobody does that shit.
Came in and out of the radar very quickly, if anybody even saw it at all.
All right. Between December 18, 2018 and November 2020, November 2,
Man, I don't know that. Everybody knows this.
Window here. Has Mr. Depp continued to star in films?
So, Mr. Depp, so the article came, the op-ed piece came out December 18 and 20 of 2018. In January and February of 2019, he shot a film called Minamata, which was an independent film that it was what we call a passion project. He loved the script and wanted to do it. So he was able to film that after the op-ed piece. And then the Dior campaign, Sauvage, I don't know the exact dates of filming, but I know that it did air throughout 2019. And it's my understanding that he still may have that contract with Dior, so he continued that product endorsement. And then in in the spring and the fall, I believe it was, Mr. Depp was able to do press for the film Waiting for the Barbarians. He went to the Deauville Film Festival. He went to the Venice Film Festival. He was well received at the press conferences. You know, life was at the same level for him in terms of his popularity over in Europe. They were still, he was still working on press for the films. And then, of course, he was scheduled to film Fantastic Beasts in early November of 2020.
Okay. And that's no longer the case, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Can we approach?
Okay.
How has she been in 100 fucking lawsuits, this person? Dude, she's like a fucking grand master testifier. She smiles, she laughs, she turns, dude.
And that's no longer the case, correct? On Fantastic Beasts. I don't want you to say anything more than that. That's no longer.
It's no longer the case, correct?
He's no longer in that film, correct?
He was paid for it, but he does not star in the film.
Okay, thank you. Now, what, if any, effect did the op-ed have on Mr. Depp's fan following?
Google and IMDb, Andy. True.
I don't know I don't think it had any effect on his fan following. Again, his Q scores didn't shift, and he clearly has a strong fan
Nobody
base.
goes back and changes their Qs.
What or who has caused the damage, if there is any, to Mr. Depp on his career and reputation between December 18, 2018 and November 2, 2020?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
Mr. Depp.
And why do you say that?
Well, again, filing the lawsuits, bringing to light the issues, is Mr. Depp doing that on his own accord? And any statements that were made by his team, Mr. Waldman or anyone else, is associated with Mr. Depp, and those statements that came out, the defamatory statements, which we'll talk about in a minute, were also...
Objection.
put out by Mr. Depp's team. So in actuality, he's causing his own demise by bringing these lawsuits forward and continuing to kind of ignite the fire of negative publicity around both of them.
Well, that's fucking zero head.
Are all
that's
of your opinions
zero
true
head.
within a reasonable degree of probability or certainty with respect to Mr. Depp's damages?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to move you to Amber Heard's damages.
So funny.
With respect to Amber Heard's claims for damages, on what subject have you been asked to offer your opinion?
Actual moronic person, this person.
So I was asked to look at the reputational harm and economic loss that Ms. Heard incurred due to the defamatory statements that Mr. Waldman, on behalf of Mr. Depp, made in April of 2020
On
and
behalf?
again in June of 2020.
And what
On
materials did you
behalf?
review in forming your opinions?
Again, many of the same materials that I reviewed for Mr. Depp's case, which was the deposition testimony, the pleadings, the
that what
discovery,
happened?
all of that was included, as well as expert testimony that was based on statistical analysis of negative social media campaigns that were created, as well as what happened. I talked to Ms. Heard's agents. I read their depositions. I talked to her publicist. I read her deposition. I talked to Ms. Heard herself to get a first-person accounting of what happened from her perspective after those defamatory statements were made. And then I looked at the, again, emails back and forth and texts back and forth with the studio, Warner Brothers, and other producers that the management team is working with to get Ms. Heard more work.
Okay. Now, before I go into the questions that I'm going to ask, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of define this so that we're all on the same page going through it. The jury has seen the 3 defamatory statements. They're defendants 1245, 1246A, and 1247. And I'm just going to refer to them as the Depp/Waldman statements in asking you all these questions. Will you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, good. Please describe Amber Heard's career prior to the publication of the Depp-Waldman statements.
So Amber's had a long career for someone who is not, is fairly young still. She was in over 50 productions, I believe including Aquaman and Justice League, but let's just say close to 50 productions. Well, certainly 50 productions before the defamatory statements were made. She had, a consistent working actor's career. Her agents were strategic as she started getting more work, that they wanted her to work with better and better directors, to have, the Danish Girl is a film that had a strong director and a strong critical acclaim. And then she went from that to getting Justice League, which is on the bigger budget, is the bigger scale movie, and then, of course, Aquaman and Aquaman 2. So her career was following a very nice, steady rise, and she was on the precipice of a meteoric rise with with Aquaman and Aquaman 2 prior to the statements.
Was Aquaman a successful film in terms of box office sales?
Aquaman was an extremely successful film. It made over $1 billion, and I believe it is the highest grossing DC comic film ever.
Now, what, if any, accolades did Amber receive for her role in Aquaman? And I'm going to call it, sometimes I'll call it Aquaman 1 just to make sure we don't get confused.
Right.
She
so
popped
in
off.
Aquaman 1, there were many emails from the director and the producer.
She carried it.
Objection,
She carried
hearsay.
She's
so
just
hard.
characterizing, Your Honor. She's not quoting them.
Well, I don't know where it's going. I'll overrule at the moment.
Thank you.
So is it
She got
Aquaman or Aquawoman?
emails from the director
Who
and
is
the
the-
producer stating that they loved her performance. and they loved
Objection,
her work.
hearsay.
You can't say what the emails say, but you can summarize them or characterize them. Can you do that?
Accolading emails? Emails of accolade from her, from the director and the producer.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled as to that.
Thank you. Okay. What type of press opportunities did Amber have prior to the Depp-Waldman statements?
So the press really loved working with Amber. She was on the cover of many magazines after The Danish Girl, after Justice League, after Aquaman. She was the cover girl, I think it was, of Marie Claire or Elle in the UK. She had a cover story of a big magazine in Mexico and Australia. They were, you know, one magazine called her Woman of the Year, another one called her Role Model of the Year. So she got a lot of press. You know, she did a lot of press, both in magazines, but also on the press tours and the press junkets that she did for the films.
And were some of those California style, Marie Claire, Elle shape?
Yes, there was a lot of them.
Objection leading.
Overruled.
There was a lot of them, so I'm not, you know, don't remember all of them, but it was, you know, GQ, Elle, Marie Claire, you know, the big magazines, both here, the UK, Eastern Europe, in Latin America, and in Australia.
Smiling
And
and
what
laughing.
about after the release of Aquaman, which was December 2018? How was her press then?
Well, the press tour was doing well, and they wanted to give her a lot more press. And I think up until the defamatory statements came out, she was on deck to do a lot of press. And then
It's not irrelevant at all.
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.